Howdy guys, thanks for joining me. So I've had my Mini 3 Pro for about half a year now. I bought it back in late June, I believe, and I've been flying it quite a bit ever since. So in this video, I'm going to share my impressions and kind of whether or not I think it's still worth buying with DJI's newer and, more expensive options. So let's dive right into it. So the first thing you're going to notice when you take this thing out of the box is that it is in fact tiny, hence the name Mini. And then one of the major selling points of this drone is that it's under 250 grams. If you don't know, 250 grams is the registration cutoff that the FAA requires. So this thing is, as you can see, a gram less than the legal registration requirement. So if you're just a hobbyist who's flying for fun, you don't need to go through the hassle of registering this thing. I'm Part 107 certified, the commercial certification, so mine is registered. It's free. It takes like 15 minutes. But that's definitely an interesting selling point for certain people. Now, in terms of picture quality, I mean, this thing slaps, man. It's amazing. So I'll throw some samples up on the screen here. But the summary of it is it can take up to 48 megapixel images, which is pretty awesome. And they look good to me. The only things that I've personally noticed, I'm not much of a pixel people, I don't look too closely. But I have noticed slight softness around the edges. And I've noticed, like, average chromatic aberrations, but they're typically pretty easy to fix in post-processing. For photography, it does have a couple of different integrated panorama modes. The first is a spherical panorama, where the drone kind of makes everything look like a tiny planet. It turns into a big sphere. It's cute, but it's gimmicky, so I don't tend to use it. 180-degree panorama is exactly what it sounds like. It's a pretty standard, super wide-angle panorama. Looks good, no complaints from me there. Next, the wide-angle panorama mode is kind of interesting because it shoots what's in front of the drone, but then it also shoots underneath, and then it stitches them together to create this very dramatic, like, super encompassing perspective of everything. I tend to use it quite a bit. And then finally, you have vertical panorama. The drone takes 3 horizontal pictures and then stitches them together for a vertical image. So yeah, I don't have a ton to say about the pictures that this thing takes. I mean, they're great. But what I do have a lot to discuss about is video. So I've always been more of a picture guy than video guy, using my, actual camera, my land-based camera here. But after I bought my last drone, I started to take way more clips, and I've started to make quite a decent bit of side income after doing stock video clips. So that's really encouraged me to shoot more video and learn about shutter speed and, the intricacies that come with shooting video. So let's talk about that. So some quick specs here. I'm not a big spec guy, but this thing shoots 4K at 60 FPS. It has 100 megabits per second bitrate. And for slow motion, it can do 1080p at 120 FPS. Clips in the daytime look amazing. I mean, there's not much to say about that. They just look fantastic. DJI does make an ND filter kit for this drone, so you can kind of snap on some ND filters to the front of the gimbal here. And, that allows you to match up your shutter speed with your frame rate. If you've ever shot video, you know what I'm talking about. DJI has an OEM set, otherwise you can get a third-party set for like half the price, and that'll do the job just fine. In any case, a picture is worth 1,000 words, or a video is at least, so I'm just going to shut up for a minute or two and let you enjoy these clips that I've shot. You can judge for yourself. So yeah, those clips kind of speak for themselves. I mean, this thing takes amazing video. I have absolutely no complaints. Dude, this thing is amazing, and I cannot find any negatives in the video quality. Going on with video, they do actually have an integrated hyperlapse mode in this drone, where the drone will take, a bunch of pictures every 2 or 3 seconds over the course of, 5, 10, 15 minutes, and then it'll actually stitch them together into a hyperlapse, like in camera. You don't even need to edit it. That being said, I typically edit my hyperlapses in DaVinci. I don't like the drone doing it because it outputs at 1080p, so eh. But yeah, the hyperlapse mode is pretty awesome. You can have just a freestanding hyperlapse where the drone just, sits there in the sky and takes pictures and then stitches them in a specific location. But you can also set up waypoints. Fly to certain locations, set up, you can tell the drone, like, take a picture here, here, and here, and it'll fly in between those waypoints at your preset like settings and capture a hyperlapse going that direction. It's pretty amazing. And now for night shooting, that's another thing I want to discuss. So one of the reasons I upgraded from my Mini 2 to this is because it has the bigger sensor, and DJI claims it has better nighttime performance, and yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, I've taken this thing out at night a couple of times, and the clips are just crispy and clean. If you look closely, you can start to see a little bit of noise from the high ISO, but it's really not that bad. And unless you're viewing it on like a 70-inch TV, you're not really going to notice unless you're actually staring closely at the pictures. On that subject too, the drone can shoot long exposures for pictures of 2 seconds. And I've found typically it looks pretty good with a 2-second exposure, but if it's a super windy day, obviously the drone is going to be fighting the wind in the sky and you'll get a little bit of shake in your pictures. For that reason, if you're shooting at night and it's pretty windy, definitely put it in manual mode and try to get a decent blend between your ISO and shutter speed. Speaking of night operations, however, you probably know that the FAA does require a strobe with at least 3 statute miles of visibility to fly at night. So what I ended up doing is I picked up this tiny little strobe light here. It's like $15. It's a no-name brand from Amazon. And I just strap it to the top of my drone with a rubber band, and that's what I've been using to fly at night. So yeah, if you're looking to fly at night, can't go wrong with one of these cheap little strobes here. I paid $15 for this. The only thing to note is that it does put your drone above the 250 gram weight limit, so you have to make sure you register that. Look at how bright that is. It's insane. And from an ease of use standpoint, this thing is stupidly easy to fly. So it has obstacle avoidance, as you can see these sensors in the front, the back, and then the bottom for landing. So you don't have obstacle avoidance on the left and the right side, but the drone will stop itself if you try to, fly headfirst into something. That being said, I definitely don't rely on that much, and I try to fly very, very carefully, especially when I'm around big buildings or cars or anything like that. Obstacle avoidance is awesome, but it's no substitute for, human attention. And then from an actual flight standpoint, it's pretty easy. You just plug in your phone to the controller like any other DJI drone. And then if you've ever played any sort of video game that has flight, like a helicopter in Battlefield or Microsoft Flight Sim or something like that, it's pretty much the same concept here. Pretty much the same controllers. It's extremely easy. As a, big time gamer, I had no issues adapting to it. Oh yeah, and I should mention, thanks to the inclusion of these sensors, the drone does have active tracking, where you can actually draw a box around a subject and then have the drone track it and follow along, and it'll do its best, not to crash. This honestly isn't a feature I use too often. I typically am shooting landscapes and cityscapes. I'm not really doing fast action or tracking people biking or anything like that. But I've played around with it and it's honestly pretty amazing. And then as far as battery life goes, DJI claims about 35 minutes on the standard battery. I've found it to vary quite a bit. I've had days where I get 30 minutes in good, clean, safe flight conditions. And then I've had days where I get 20 minutes if I'm zipping around in sport mode with 35 mile per hour wind. So it varies quite a bit. And they do offer 2 different batteries. You have the standard batteries, which is what I have because I'm cheap. And then they have the plus batteries that last about 15 more minutes. Those plus batteries, I haven't tried them yet, but I'd like to pick them up. As I transition to more professional stuff, the idea of having a longer battery life definitely appeals to me. The only thing to know about those batteries is that they're quite a bit more expensive, and they do push the drone past 250 grams, so you do need to register it if you buy those. And then on that same subject, the maximum range that you can fly and the reliability of the connection depends a lot on different circumstances too. I find when I'm flying out in the country, where my parents live, for example, there's not much out there. It's a couple houses and a bunch of, cows and farm fields. So I can usually get close to 3 miles of distance before I start to drop connection. Whereas flying down in the city, you know, between skyscrapers and stuff, I'm lucky if I get even half a mile sometimes. As you might expect, trees and big concrete towers are the two biggest blockers of signal. So if you're flying like downtown or between buildings and stuff, you gotta be like super careful. That being said, if you drop signal, the drone can fly back to its starting location. It's called return to home. I try not to rely on that too much just because I don't know how much I trust the optical sensors on the front here to like fly in between big buildings and stuff. So I try not to get to the point where I'm losing signal with my drone. And then the last thing I want to touch on is wind resistance. So DJI claims this thing can withstand about 25 mile per hour winds. It's like 10.7 meters per second, I think. In practice, I've taken it out into 35 mile per hour gusts, and I haven't had too many issues. Then the wind is really strong. Of course, you're going to get a little bit more shaking in footage and whatnot, so I've noticed slight jitteriness. But honestly, the gimbal on this thing is so strong that it can fight a lot of movement. The biggest danger of flying in heavy wind conditions is a flyaway, and what that means is essentially the wind is moving faster than your drone can. This thing flies at like 36 miles per hour in sport mode. But yeah, so if you get a wind gust that goes faster than the drone can move, you know, it can get dragged out to the abyss. So yeah, in case it's not obvious, I love this drone and I'm super happy I bought it. I bought it used, so I got a pretty good deal on it. But I don't know if it's the right pick for everybody because they discontinued this thing, so prices have spiked quite a bit. You're looking at like $700 to buy this thing new. And that doesn't really make sense because the successor, the new Mini, is only like $50 more. So if you're the type who is afraid of buying used, which is fine, I get it. I prefer used, some people like to buy new. But if you're the type that prefers to buy new, definitely just pick up the new Mini. You're going to pay barely anything, and it's going to be an improvement over everything. So I'll leave that affiliate link in the description. You know, if you buy it through me, I get a tiny kickback, so, you know, thanks in advance. And that about sums it up, guys. Thanks for, you know, listening to me talk about my drone for 30 minutes. And if you want to know more about drone flying or stock footage and crap like that, you can check out my channel. Thanks so much for watching and have a great day.